Stranger Things review, Stranger Things review. I finally saw the final season of... No, my God, I hope it's not the final season. Season 3 of Stranger Things, finally saw it. So, this is gonna be hard because I don't know how I can give my review without giving some spoilers, but I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try my hardest. So, finally finished watching Season 3. Very, very sad at the end. You know what? I'm not going to be able to do this review without revealing spoilers. So I'm just going to put this out there. If you haven't seen it, you haven't binge watched the show, don't watch this video. Just stop. Stop, go watch it, and then come back. We have waited almost 2.5 years. No, almost like 1.5 years probably is more accurate. Since we last saw the cast of Stranger Things together in good old Hawkins. And the show, for those who don't know, is a series on Netflix, and it is based in the 1980s, which for people like me, it is pretty cool because you get to see not only how we lived in the 1980s, but it also makes you feel fucking old. Anybody who's born in the 80s, I hate to say that, but we are. We are officially old now. But this series is so good with getting just every little minute detail for the 1980s was represented so beautifully, and they pay attention so closely to the detail, like the production on this show, the production designers. So when it's like award time or award season, they need to give these people some awards. I think you're officially old when a television show starts using your decade as nostalgia. Stranger Things Season 3! The Demogorgon! 11. It's been a minute since we've seen the kids. Newsflash, they are not any longer kids. Oh no, they have gone through some puberty. Most of the characters did return in this series. I think the only ones who were not in the series were the ones who were killed off. I'm sorry to say. So like Bob, Barbara, and anybody else that died, you guys are gone. But most of the other recurring characters are back, and they have gone through puberty, so there's always that. So when you start watching the show, it's a little bit of a shock because you see the kids and all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, they have aged 5 years at least each. And then you remember though that this last season was shot like 1.5 years ago. So anyway, I digress. The season starts off, in my opinion, very slow, and then it slowly builds. Now, my question is always this, because when you have a television series that has so much attention and publicity and hype, such as Stranger Things, one would think that you're gonna have a lot of new people checking out the show. Especially since it's good on Netflix, because if you haven't seen the show from the very beginning, you can binge watch it all the way from the beginning, because seasons 1 and 2 are up, and they've been up this entire time. I was a director and producer for this show. I would have made the first episode kick ass, because I'm dealing with people who are probably going to check this out for the first time after word of mouth, and also those returning fans like me. For some reason, the way the series started out, in my opinion, it was very slow. 11 is no longer a kid. The boys are no longer boys. In fact, a lot of them have grown about, I would say, like 3 inches, and their voice octaves and registers have all gone down. They've gone through puberty, like I said, you know? They're doing everything. They're making out, they are kissing, they are exploring their booming childhood and sexuality. That actually was a very fluent theme throughout this series, was just all of the Stranger Things kids are starting to deal with their sexuality and feelings of love and romance and how you talk to girls and how you ignore girls and how you ignore guys. You can block people now, you can screen those phone calls. Back then in the 1980s, we couldn't do any of that. We had to pick up a phone and be surprised who it was on the other end. And hopefully it wasn't someone that we were pissed off at. It was just like a crapshoot. It was Russian roulette. The Stranger Things kids are dealing with their booming sexuality, we are introduced, or reintroduced, I'm not so sure about this one, but Billy plays a very integral role in this series. Billy, in my opinion, looks like the poor man's Zac Efron. He is rocking a mullet for the series. He plays a lifeguard at the local pool. We also don't see Winona Ryder for a good minute. I don't think, if my recollection serves, I don't think we even see her until like the 4th episode. Now, I know that a lot of the cast, they're doing bigger and better things thanks to the success of Stranger Things, which, rock on, that's kind of the hope. Millie Bobby Brown. I don't know. So she has been doing a couple of movies. I think she was in Godzilla, which may or may not still be in theaters. I haven't seen it, but rock on. Godzilla. Most of the scenes were shot with most of the cast separated. It didn't seem like a lot of them had call days where all of them were together until like the last 2 episodes when everything sort of heats up. I'm gonna probably talk about some spoilers because at this point I think most of the die-hard Stranger Things fans have already binge watched the series. So if you are and you haven't, get on our level, number 1, and then number 2, I'm about to ruin it for you. So Hopper is just the everyman. He is the chief of police in Hawkins. Hopper is kind of in a funk. He's dealing with his newly crowned daughter, 11, and her budding romance with Finn Lockhart or Walkhart. I don't know. I can't think of his actual name right now. So she is dealing with a budding romance with him. And they're kissing, they're making out, they're just doing everything that, you know, Hopper was like, oh, hell to the no, not in my cabin. I have a very keen ability, I feel, to see where a story is headed because I love stories, I love mysteries, so I can kind of see where a good twist would happen or where the directors or producers would take the arc of the character storyline. And something about Hopper from the minute this season started struck me as off. Number 1, he gained a lot of weight. Which I'm not hating because I'm fluffy and I'm curvy. So as far as I'm concerned, Hopper looked great. He looked a little bit more fluffy. He looked a little bit more snuggly. He probably has just been sitting at home eating a lot more Oreos because he's worrying about his daughter making out in the other room with, you know, the kid. So he's a little bit sort of like bumming around. He's still the police chief, but you don't really see him doing that much. The season progresses, like I said, a little bit slow. Will, who the last season we saw him pretty much get eviscerated by the giant black thing of darkness. He is constantly bothered by that spirit or whatever it is, like being stuck inside his neck or the back of his neck or in his body. So you see him paying a lot of attention to his neck the entire series. Oh, this is something I loved. 1980s being represented, right? There's a lot of people that know there are some culturally iconic movies from the 1980s. If you're as old as me and you grew up in the 1980s, we have our movies, right, that define our decade. We had, in my opinion, E.T. We had Back to the Future. We had a lot of good ones. We had like Little Monsters. I could go on forever. There's so many. Goonies. A lot of those movies make really cool appearances in this season, whether it's by a poster on the wall, whether it's by a movie that the kids actually sneak into the movie theater to see. To get these movies used in another TV show that inevitably is making money, you gotta pay some big bucks. That or a cast member of said movie from the 80s loves Stranger Things and was like, we want to be in this fucking show, so put this movie in. Back to the Future is It actually makes a couple of appearances, but you have to be very attentive to detail. The one notable scene is when the kids all are escaping or doing whatever they're doing in their, Stranger Things lives. They go into the movie theater, and Back to the Future 1 is premiering, and it's just so cool because it instantly took me back. I remember seeing Back to the Future, the first one, in the movie theater, and I just love seeing that. Okay, yeah, so it progresses kind of slow. Now, this is where it's very difficult for me to think that this TV show, knowing it is so popular and has so many eyes on it, does not have a political agenda of its own, because that would be such a wasted opportunity, wouldn't it? The Russians make a very big appearance in this season of Stranger Things. The Russians, well, they're playing the bad guys. So, without saying anything, if you follow politics, I think you can discern where the creators of Stranger Things' political affiliation lies, if you get my meaning. The Russians are the enemies throughout the entire season. When I first heard that the season was premiering, it was very difficult for me not to go on social media and see some kind of a spoiler, and I couldn't find shit. So that was actually really good. So I went into it blind. The one thing I did see was a lot of people crying, a lot of tears flowing after people had binge watched the show. So I knew that something sad was coming at the end. A spoiler alert happening right now. If you don't want to know the end of Stranger Things, stop this video and go pet your muffin. That was not supposed to come out like it did. At the end of the series, the series spends a lot of time as well in a mall, which again, the costume designers, the people who set up the locations, brilliant to capture the 80s by using a mall. Because the mall has all of the stores that we used to go to. They used their, original logos from the 1980s, Burger King logos from the 80s. So essentially, you're in the mall most of the series. The final episode or two, Winona Ryder, she is dealing with the death of her boyfriend, Bob, who was killed and eaten like a squash on a hot summer day. She witnessed it. So she's dealing with some pretty deep, dark depression and some trauma. Hopper, the whole series, is pretty much trying to, like I said, this theme of like love and relationships is braided into the series. Hopper's lonely as fuck, and Hopper knows that Winona lost her dude, but he still arranges a date with her. She stands him up, but she doesn't really stand him up. She is trying to figure out why her magnets suddenly lost their ability to magnify on her refrigerator. She spends most of the season doing that, so she was with somebody, like a scientist, a physicist, figuring that out. Hopper thinks she stood him up. She didn't. She never really gets a chance to tell him that she didn't stand him up. She was trying to figure out, like, if, the Demigorgons are back, or if everybody's going to hell. This is the 1980s, so there were no cell phones, there were no texts. She could not text Hopper and be like, bro, I'm literally just trying to figure out if the end of the world is coming again. We'll have dinner next week or something. But, like I said, she's going through, like, some depression, so it's, like, stages of grief. She needs time. She's not ready to bang. But Hopper doesn't give up. Hopper is kind of having some sort of, like, identity crisis, existential thing happening. It was just weird. Watching Hopper this season, in my opinion, was just weird. He looked different. He acted different. He was dealing with different things. He was being a father for the first time. It gets to the point where Hopper wants to confront Eleven and the fact that when she's in his house lately, she's always making out with the one kid. And Hopper is not really good with, like, feelings and emotion, like. So he's spending like half of this season trying to find a way to talk to her about that without coming off like he's, this like square dad. Basically, he takes the kid in the car and like threatens his life, and he said, stop making out with her, just stop or I will kill you and I will, turn you into a quivering thing of jelly. Scares the fuck balls out of the kid. So the rest of the series is basically Eleven and the kid trying to figure out like, why did you dump me? Then she officially dumped him. Then they're back and forth and yeah. Love triangle stuff. Toothless, one of my favorite characters. He was there. Toothless didn't seem to age very much. Toothless took on a bit of, I want to say, like an Elliot role this time around, which is to say that he creates this ham radio, which is trying to get a signal from the Russians or from these people that you're going to see during the series. And he meets someone on this ham radio and tells the gang that it's his girlfriend and that she's perfect in every way. And of course, nobody believes Toothless because he's toothless and God forbid he actually finds love. I knew that he actually had a real girl. And you will see at the end that she is in fact real and she is super cute and super smart. And that was so great. I was so happy for Toothless. The last one or two scenes. The Russians basically have been continuing the Upside Down. They have been working with some sort of like fusion, some sort of nuclear energy to essentially break through the wall. There's this main Russian guy who looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who I am convinced when they casted this part of it, they put in the casting thing, we want a Russian Arnold Schwarzenegger. The guy looked like him, the guy talked like him. I was waiting for him to just be like, I'll be back. Long story short, they take a hostage, they nickname him Molotov, they go to a fair, the guy gets shot. The real action happens in the last episode where Winona and the kids all figure out where the Russians are creating and maintaining the negative force field to the Upside Down. There's a new monster this time around. I didn't think he was really scary, in my opinion. I felt the original Demogorgon, the one that like sprouted and bloomed and he looked like a sunflower on crack. I thought he was actually scarier than the monster in this series. The monster in this series is way bigger, he's way disgusting, his body looks like the world's largest pimple if you popped the fuck out of that sucker. And this is gonna be gross, I'm warning you. And there was like blood and guts and pus and it all came out, and then multiply that by 1,000,000. That is what his body consisted of. And he had tons of teeth. Wasn't that scary to me? And I don't know why. I think the original Demogorgon reminded me of that like white ghost man from Pan's Labyrinth. And that scared the fuck out of me. This monster wasn't as scary. I don't know. I might be in the minority with that, but I didn't think he was that scary. What he looked like and what he consisted of was basically this ooze, this goose that is prominent throughout the entire series that is apparently like energy. And that energy, once it gets together, it formed that giant monster that was just hell-bent on taking Hawkins down. So, last scene, we do see Winona, and I skipped some stuff, so it's not really that many spoilers, but I am skipping some stuff carefully. So, just watch it either way, because my review is not going to be good enough. It's probably going to be, no. The last scene, we see Winona and Hopper and the kids and Toothless. You know, he has his little, like, E.T. phone home thing on the top of a cliff somewhere to just shut this thing down. You see a little slit. You see, like, a tiny little slit where these Russians are trying to penetrate to get back in, to whatever. Eventually, they shut it off. Now, this is where a Sopranos moment happens, and I'm going to tell you my opinion on what I think happened. So, Hopper was right by this ginormous, like a telescope, basically, that was trying to penetrate the wall to the Upside Down. And him and Winona make eye contact because she has to shut off the machine, but in doing that, it most likely will eviscerate Hopper and he will die. However, there are theories that he did not die, and I will tell you why that is. Give me a moment. So, you know, there's a lot of very clever camera work happening, and why I say there's a lot of Sopranos moments in the final show is because they did a couple of those blackaways where everything goes to black and it's silent for maybe like 3 or 4 seconds. In your mind, you're like, all right, is this the end? He pulls the plug, people are led to believe that Hopper dies. He kind of nods at Winona to be like, yeah, it's cool. You have to, you know, save the town, but get the fuck out of the town. But I'm fine with dying. Don't feel bad. I'll sacrifice myself. It's fine. It shuts off. A lot of the kids are moving out of Hawkins, but they put in a Marvel's Avengers moment just at the very end. So just at the very end, to make sure you keep watching it all the way through. You're in a Russian prison, and you see the subtitles. One of the gatekeepers or whoever in the jail, you see one of the subtitles saying like, who should I go get? And they say, go get the Russian one, but don't get the American one. American one. So you are left thinking, first of all, who's the American one in the Russian prison? And is it Hopper? Did he not die? Was he merely transported into a linear world or wherever the fuck they are, and he's really alive? The only thing that kind of won't make that seem possible is because that note that he was trying to write 11 pretty much the whole series about boys and boundaries. It's just a beautiful note, and basically saying how his life had no meaning and no purpose until 11 came into his life, and how much she means to him, and it's important for her to have love in her life, but to experience it and move on and not be afraid. Something like pain is change, so don't be afraid of pain. Pain is good. So she's crying, people are crying. Winona, if Hopper died, has to now deal with 2 of her supposed people getting killed that cared about her, which sucks. That's a lot of therapy. But you're left thinking, is that American in that prison Hopper? And if so, will he be in the next season? Now, I did a little research, and the actor that does play Hopper is on 1 or 2 other shows on Netflix. So, is he an integral part of the story at this point? And to kind of kill him off, would that be a big bummer? Yeah. I don't know. Let me know what you think if you saw it. I think, I thought it was great. Like I said, there were some hit or misses in the first few episodes. It kind of dragged on for a little bit, where I thought they could have tightened it up a little bit. But Stranger Things 3, it was amazing. If you've seen it, let me know what you think. If you haven't seen it, sorry. I warned you I was going to say some spoilers, but hopefully it's still not going to dissuade you from checking it out. Great series. Thank you guys so very much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.